and so Roman obviously wasn't there, and so he, after Heyman goes on basically talking about how, the tribal chief accepts the fact that they take accountability and that losing is not acceptable, and that he understands that. They then immediately, when Solo says, well, it's not acceptable, right? So there has to be consequences. And Heyman kind of looks at him nodding, but goes, well, that's not really what the tribal chief said, And then he actually pushes Heyman to the side and looks at Jimmy, who lost to Jay at WrestleMania, right? And so he looks at him, and then he walks over, and Jimmy's like, what are you talking about? Like, you're talking about me? And then he hugs him and goes, you're my brother. No, I love you. And Jimmy says, okay, well, I love you too, and all that. And then out of the crowd, another guy that does what Jimmy usually does to everybody else in the hood attacks him the same way that he does to Jay and Cody and all these other people leading into WrestleMania. And then you get basically the story of another member of the bloodline, and we're all sitting here going, is it Jacob Fatu, the Samoan werewolf? Because there's been rumors out for the last couple weeks that he's on the WWE's roster now, and that they're waiting to debut him in some way. And then there were some reports that he might be going to NXT, and we're not really sure if he's going straight to the main roster. And it turns out that it's actually Tama Tonga, another guy that is an indie guy that's also part of the bloodline. He is Haku's son. Haku, much known over in the world of wrestling as being maybe the toughest actual dude ever in wrestling. You've seen people say that, I think from Hogan to Bret Hart to all these guys have always said Haku was the toughest guy they were ever around in the locker room, and that he really meant business and didn't screw around. And he's obviously part of the bloodline. He's a cousin to the bloodline, as a lot of guys are, right? But he is part of that. And Tonga looked like he was in amazing shape, and he helped Solo beat the crap out of Jimmy, and Jay didn't come out. The whole crowd was chanting yeet yeet, thinking, and so did I, that Jay was going to come out and that was going to be kind of the Uso tag team getting back together, and that's not. Nope, they let Jimmy took the bumps and took it in the teeth, and it ended up being Solo basically bullying Paul Heyman back out of the ring. And when he went to call Roman, like I said, he stomped on the phone and basically established that he's the new leader of this version of the bloodline. So it's almost like NWO, where they're kind of spinning off different sections of it now, like they did with NWO. But I love it because it works so much better than something like NWO, because they're actually all family. So it really makes it so genuine to work that real life bit into what they're doing. And obviously they still now you're still going, oh God, they still have the American, the werewolf, the Samoan werewolf, Jacob Fatu coming in at some point here too, it seems like, right? So will he go with Jimmy and then be as opposed to Tonga and Solo? Is Jay going to get involved in this? Is Sammy going to come back and get involved in this now? Is Roman going to come back? What's he going to have to say about not being the leader, or is the bloodline even still in what he wants to do? Obviously he's part of their family, so they can't just ignore it. So it's going to be fascinating. And I'll tell you what, this is how you tell a story. This is how you tell a long-term story. This story's been going on for years, and they're still reinventing it. And this is what Paul Heyman meant when he was talking about the innings and all of that. And then you add The Rock to it, and then that didn't even take all the bullets out of your gun, because there's still more family members whose contracts are coming up in indies and other places that they can pull all these people in. There's still females that we haven't seen yet that are in the family, right? That they can bring in, like Tamina and Nia Jax, who are also part of that. But they're technically in the bloodline, right? And there's other females still in the indies right now that they could still bring in that are still technically part of the bloodline as far as family relation and being a cousin or whatever, right? There's still other dudes that we haven't even seen that are still in the immediate bloodline that are in the indies right now in different places, right? So it's really interesting to see where this bloodline thing is going. It's the best thing WWE's probably ever done, and it's like NWO on steroids, and it's so much more genuine than that because all these guys are actually related. So it's so believable because we've all waited for them all to work together and wondered if they ever would, and now they're doing it in a way where they're putting it in this existing huge Roman storyline, and now all these layers of fabric are really weaving into each other in a way that's making it so fucking interesting, and it's really impressive what they're doing with this. It really is. The bloodline is such an interesting, genuine thing that they're doing, and now we all just get to wait to see what Dynamite reacts to it on Wednesday, because apparently AEW is just reacting to everything WWE's doing now. So are they going to have some version of Dustin coming out and doing some kind of bloodline or something on Wednesday? Because that seems to be all AEW's interested in doing, is reacting and stoking the fire. They put out this video and then they tell everybody that they can't post the video because they didn't get the reaction they were hoping for, which was they were hoping everybody would go, oh, see, CM Punk's a jerk. And instead the fans were chanting for CM Punk because everybody already knew what happened. It's already been widely reported. CM Punk already went on the MMA Hour with Ariel Helwani and said what happened. That's exactly what you saw in the video. And for anybody trying to spin it any other way, he said he choked the guy. I mean, I don't know what you want. He admitted it openly and said, yeah, I choked him, and he admitted it. And, maybe he knew the video was going to come out and maybe that's why he went on Ariel's show. But if that's true, then he beat them to the punch, which means that he's smarter than what they were doing, and that what he said about them and their management is probably true. All that video did was expose that AEW doesn't know what they're doing, because why was CM Punk even in the position to be the one addressing that situation with Jack in the first place? Why were people asking him to go over there? That's bad management. That means that you were not doing your job, Tony, and the other people that were there, by asking CM Punk to get involved in that situation in the first place, right? And so it only went to show the fact that AEW is just really not focused on what they should be, which is creative. And Edge was right about everything that he said. Adam Copeland, when he came out last week on Dynamite and said the things he said, he was right. But people in his own company clearly don't believe that, or they wouldn't have done what they did on the most recent Dynamite, where they basically made a mockery of themselves. Will Ospreay come out talking about Triple H not understanding the grind? Or who are you talking to, bro? Who are you talking to? You haven't been in the game long enough to talk about Triple H, bro. You have not been in the game long enough to talk about Triple H. So I love Will Ospreay. We all love watching his matches. I think he's a little higher on himself than a lot of other people are, though, because as good as he is and as good as he can be, he's not an all-time great yet. And he made it sound like his matches are the best in the industry. And it's like, well, they're good. Some of them are very good. Some of them are classics, you could even say. But because of the scope and where they were, you're not even in a place like WWE where everybody gets to see what you do. And AEW is not even really using you. They had you come out in sweats for a 4-minute promo to rip a guy that runs another company who spent years building and helping save that company from potentially going down when they were not winning in the ratings. And when Shawn Michaels went down and he had to take over a stable, nobody knew if it would work, and he made it work, helped the Attitude Era get back on by being controversial, by grinding. And you're talking about this dude, and that was before he even got with Stephanie, which is what you were talking about anyway. So a lot of nonsense going on in AEW, a lot of great storytelling going on in WWE, and it's just fantastic to really watch and see the fabric and the quality of what WWE is doing right now. Not just with that, but just with like what they're trying to do with LA Knight. They're giving guys that deserve their due. And as a fan, that really helps to have that payoff, because you know that they're really building it, and then there's a payoff. See, when Vince was there, they would build it, like guys like Dolph Ziggler, and they would build it, and guys like Christian, and they would build it, and then nothing would ever happen. They'd get the opportunity, and then they never get over. And you're like, dude, are you ever going to put these guys over? And a lot of times they wouldn't, until the fans turned on them with somebody like Daniel Bryan, and it kind of changed their philosophy a little bit, where they said, oh, wow, that really worked out. Maybe we should try that sometime. And that's really what Triple H is. Hey, I'm going to go with what works. I want to be successful. I want us to last and be even bigger and better. So if the fans are telling us something outright that they want to see, and we can do it and it makes sense, then let's do it. Now, I do hope they work out contracts for Becky and Drew, because apparently they were both up, and obviously they both lost at WrestleMania. Drew won, and then he lost, and all that. But Drew's going to love touching on all this AEW video stuff and the CM Punk promos, and I'm excited to see where all that stuff goes between Punk and Drew on Raw, and getting Seth back in it when he's healthy enough to come back. It's fascinating. And WWE, now they've got all these bullets in their chamber, because now they're going to do these great bloodline storylines and keep going forward. And then eventually you're going to get like Seth back healthy and get Roman back healthy, and they're going to get all these guys back. And The Rock already said he's going to come back later looking for Cody. So we already have all this stuff to look forward to. And in the meantime, they're just going to keep building and building and building and building. And that's what you don't see in places like AEW. They're not building anything. The only guy they're really building is Swerve Strickland. That's the only guy they're truly building, right? Everybody else, it's just kind of like you show up and here's a promo, or hey, we're going to tell you. When you have to announce somebody's having a match, it's because there's not a natural build where people already understand that that's going to happen through the show that you just did and the shows you've done to build into it. So that's okay to do once in a while, but every single match, you're like, oh, we have to announce it because we didn't build anything into it. And that's why you don't sell tickets. That's what the problem is. It's the creative. It's not the talent. We know you're going to have a good match when you get in the ring. It's the creative. You have to build to these crescendos and then have payoffs. That's how you get fan engagement and investment. It will happen if you just focus on that and do that. Stop worrying about what's going on everywhere else. You have a whole bunch of talent on your roster, Tony Khan, so start using it better. If you don't know how to do that, then hire somebody that knows how to. There's no shame in that. If you're not a TV producer, TV producing is hard and it's consistent. So you may have one show that's great, and then the next one fades off because you have to develop a consistent storyline building fabric that weaves together the same way that you see in WWE. And the great thing is I know you're already kind of copying them a little bit, whether it's in jest or on purpose with the Dustin Joe thing versus the Cody Joe thing and the whatever. But you can copy some elements, but don't say that you're a competitor and don't try to act like you're a competitor to WWE because it's literally the MLB versus AA. It's not the same thing. They're on the level where they built and built and built, and you're only 5 years old, so you're going to eventually get to a better level, and you've already got a TV deal and stuff that a lot of companies don't have at the same level. TNA's been looking for the same kind of TV deal that you have forever and haven't been able to get it through different owners and mismanagement and different eras and stuff, even though they've been around for a while. So AEW still has that potential, but they've got to start getting out of their own way. Get out of your own way. Look at what WWE is doing because they're really setting the precedent for what this should look like. And you should really start looking at that and look at other things that were successful. You don't have to just copy WWE. You can go back and learn lessons from the greatest days of WCW, not the bad ones, but the greatest ones, right? You have Tony Schiavone with you. He can talk to you about that. They can tell you what worked and what doesn't work and why, but you have to listen to the people around you. You have good people around you. You have to start listening to them, right? There's no way that guys like Chris Jericho and Tony Schiavone are telling you that stuff like what you did on Dynamite this week is a good idea. You can tell by the looks on their faces when they were out at the ring, right? It's not a good idea to stoke the fire of somebody who is already dominating you. There's no point in doing that. For the entire industry to grow, there needs to be less adversarial bullshit, and we need to focus more on the story and the creative so that pro wrestling is what it really is, which is great pro wrestling. It's good matches, but there has to be good story built in to invest in those matches because the truth is that the matches are fake. They are fake. The action and the athleticism is not fake, and injuries are not fake, and it's not fake in that way. But it's a contrived story. So the way that you make this stuff all work, where all the athleticism matters, is the story. And if you only have the athleticism without the story, then it's kind of obvious, right? It's just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. Oh, whatever. A kick, less kicks mean more than, if you have one kick, it means more than 10 kicks because you built into that one kick being such a big deal. You don't need 10 super kicks every single match. You don't need to do stuff like that. What you need to do is build, and then every single move means more because you're building it. That's what pro wrestling is, right? And that's when it's at its best, is because there's long stories and less action, and then on big, huge cards like WrestleMania, you have both, where you have the big story of crescendo building into even more action than you normally would get, and that's what makes it so good. It's just like a pro boxing fight where these guys talk crap and they have a press conference, or UFC, they talk crap, they have a press conference, and then you finally get the action and the payoff at the pay-per-view, right? It's really a similar model, only WWE, it's actually even harder because they have to keep these storylines going week after week after week after week after week. It never stops. Because in UFC, you get to that fight, and then the fight ends, and then maybe there's a rematch later, maybe there's not. Most of the time, there's not. Sometimes for big fights, there is. Sometimes there's a couple, but it takes years to set all that up. And they don't keep the storylines going usually in between unless it's just organic between guys talking on social media or whatever. WWE has to keep real storylines going constantly all the time. And then mixing true life into that, like they're doing with the Bloodline, is so smart because it makes it so genuine, and that payoff feels so much more real, right? And then the athleticism matches it. And that's what people didn't like about the Jimmy and Jay, is that the athleticism didn't match the story that they had built. It was a match that didn't really have a whole lot to it. Yes, it's brother versus brother, but they didn't sell the athleticism that the story had built into. And that's a different problem, but I'd rather have that problem than the one that AEW has, where you're not building anything and you're just going into having good athletic matches. Those matches only matter with that payoff. So I hope AEW gets it together, because we all want to see them succeed. Them succeeding is good for everybody. It's good for pro wrestling. It's good for everything, right? But WWE right now is hitting it on all cylinders. And Triple H already promised it. By next WrestleMania, you're going to start seeing shit that you have not seen before, where they take the same fabric that you know and they keep amplifying it up and up and up. And we're already seeing that. Bringing in Tonga, signing the Samoan Werewolf. These things are going to only continue to help them, where they don't need to go sign everybody like Will Ospreay, no matter how he's offended by that or not. They don't need to go get Mercedes back. If I think she'll still eventually come back, but they don't need to go get people. They can develop people into their existing storylines and make them so that then companies like AEW want to sign them. AEW wouldn't want Sasha Banks if she hadn't already been in WWE and they hadn't already spent the time building and developing her, right? Because nobody would know who she is if she hadn't done that, right? And so that's where this stuff comes in. They took Jade Cargill. Now Jade's on an even bigger level with bigger eyes in front of her, and she's going to become a huge star because WWE spent the time. They brought her in and developed her for months before she ever even got on TV, right? And they're going to continue to do that. Tonga, they signed in like January. He wasn't even on TV until now, so they already got him in, put him on the right workout plans and whatever. That he wasn't doing bad before, but they already put him in. They've already started building the fabric. They already have him right where he is, built him in, so he sees how everything's already happening, and he was ready to step in now a couple months later, right after WrestleMania, so the timing is perfect. So now Roman can step away and nobody even notices for a second because there's so much other shit going on with the bloodline that's so interesting. You still have Heyman involved. You still have all this stuff. So it's so rich and so interesting and so good, and I can't wait now. It's like the 90s again, where I can't wait to watch the next WWE show because it's so intertwined with great storytelling, with the athleticism, and with other cool, innovative things that they try and do because they built up the story and they're good at it, and you have faith that they're going to figure it out. Even if there's a little bit of a dud or a little bit of a bad promo this week or whatever, you know that it's going to come back around and they're going to figure that out, right? Because they're listening to the fans, because they have good creative, because they're focused on how the fabric weaves together. I really, really, really hope that you guys like and subscribe. Please do that, especially if you're on Twitch, you can follow. On YouTube, please subscribe and like. That really helps, so more of an audience for everything. And let me know what you think. If there's something you want to see changed on the formatting or different topics talked about or whatever. I do all kinds of different stuff, so please let me know because it's all about you and bringing this to you so that it's going to be fantastic and we can all enjoy all of this stuff together. Thanks so much, guys. Until next time.